With all the changes Evernight did receive throughout these beta cycles, mainly being regarding some slight nerfs, there is a lot of talk and a lot of honestly misinformation about how she does perform. A lot of people, and even, during when she was stronger, she was obviously stronger before. A lot of people are calling her a bad main DPS. A lot of people are calling her a glorified eidolon for Castorice. A lot of people are calling her a Castorice slave. The same cycle you see with these characters that are, a main DPS disguised as a sub DPS, happen to Noxa, happen to whoever else. And so today I'm going to be talking about it. Before getting into it entirely, this is, me after I recorded the video. I want to have a disclaimer. I am not throwing shade and downplaying Castorice at all. I'm just going to be talking about Evernight specifically and how she compares to Castorice in this video, and talking about why I think she's just as good, if not better, in some situations. But even though I do mention that, I am not downplaying Castorice's potential. Feel like I really need to say that because a lot of people will take this the wrong way if I don't. So if you guys don't know, Evernight is the brand new DPS in 3.6 first half. She functions very similarly technically to Castorice, where she is HP drain, her damage comes from her Memo Sprite. She has capabilities to make your team do more damage as well. And she herself actually does do a lot of damage. Whole point is to also detonate her Memo Sprite. You want to get to 16 Memoria stacks in order to detonate her actual Memo Sprite to do the big AoE hit. And the teammate she does use is very similar, practically just identical to what Castorice does use. The best team you can do is Castorice plus Evernight, but that's why a lot of people think she is only good there. Outside of it, she's bad, she's just the worst Castorice, just a Castorice eidolon, and so on. To an extent, I do understand why people do think this, especially when you can't really test the unit yourself, you haven't really been keeping up with gameplay. And a lot of showcases try to show that, but there are a lot of more in-depth ones now. A lot of more lower cost clears, such as from YouTubers that are more skilled in the game with a higher ceiling. A lot more recent gameplay has shown, and I myself have tested, that she very much functions very well on her own main DPS teams and doesn't actually rely on someone like Hyacinth like Castorice does. While yes, Hyacinth and her Lycone especially is a big upgrade, being able to drain teams' HP, help a lot with the team damage, increase max HP to make Evernight herself do more damage. She very much functions better, and I honestly do agree with a lot of people that think this, I myself included. I think most people won't agree with this, but she functions a lot better without Hyacinth than Castorice. Castorice really needs Hyacinth. Castorice with Hyacinth and without Hyacinth is night and day. I'm not saying you have to have Hyacinth run Castorice, but the difference is very much there. Same thing with Evernight, but Evernight functions a lot better without Hyacinth and Hyacinth Lycone. And another thing is, sustaining the setups with Evernight as opposed to Castorice is much more possible. With Castorice specifically, with how she drains the team's HP, you are very much not able to run a sustain the setup. There are times where you can. Very rare though, and it's very much more difficult. Usually for 99% of the time, you're not able to do sustain this in high-end endgame gameplay, as opposed to Evernight, where she is not draining her team's HP, she's just draining her and her Memo Spray, and you are able to cycle it very easily thanks to the Memoria stack, allowing her to actually get a very high ceiling gameplay. That also does perform very well. There are also a lot of calcs now that you can see where her numbers are actually not too far below or above Castorice, actually is around that level. Obviously, Castorice plus Evernight, the whole team damage, so if you run Castorice, Evernight, Triby, and Hyacinth, that is going to be the team with the best damage, of course. But when it comes to a main DPS, so let's say the same team, for example, Castorice, Hyacinth, Triby, RMC, and it would be the same team for Evernight, but instead of Castorice, it's Evernight. The numbers, if you look at the calcs, especially from recent calcs, they are actually usually very similar. Most people that do the calcs, some have it higher for Evernight, some have it a bit lower, but they are around the same level. And honestly, getting the Memoria stacks to 16 and getting the nuke from her Memo Sprite is a lot quicker and easier as opposed to getting the dragon with Castorice, especially with Hyacinth. You still can get dragon very quickly, but I do think the Memoria stacks and getting the 16 to detonate the actual Memo Sprite from Evernight is a lot quicker, and you can get more damage output faster. And since she herself can very much want a sustain but doesn't need a sustain as much as Castorice, another thing that does actually raise her ceiling above Castorice is the whole sustainless fact. I know I already talked about this enough about sustainless being stronger, but with sustainless, you get another support, meaning Evernight herself can end up doing more damage than Castorice, because again, with Castorice, you practically have to run a sustain. So the extra support is going to jump up her damage a lot, and that also does increase her ceiling by a lot more, because now you got to think about how you can actually do your turns without consuming too much HP, and then there's obviously some RNG involved in it. When you get hit too much, you'll probably die. But again, any sustainless team is going to have higher ceiling, especially at a similar investment level when you go down to like the E0 levels, where you definitely do have to play very smart. I'm obviously not talking about like, you know, E6 levels where sustainless is better just because you do so much damage before they can act. I'm mainly talking about sustainless way so you can play properly at around the E0 levels. When you are factoring in sustainless, it's going to be a much higher ceiling than running a sustain. Because running a sustain, you really don't have to worry about dying, especially if you have the optimal sustain. And even if you don't, there's always someone like Gallagher or Luocha, so there's not really a worry about dying. But running sustainless, there is always the idea of you need to play smart so you don't end up dying. Hence why the ceiling of Evernight, especially with her ability to run a ceiling team with sustainless, and if you are able to achieve that high ceiling and perform very well with her without a sustain, it's going to function similarly or better than Castorice. You could make the argument of why do I have to get better at the game when I can just play the team with the same kind of investment? Obviously, that is a valid argument, and it definitely does depend from player to player. If you're not that crazy in the game, you might just take the easier route and use Castorice with the sustain and call it good, especially if you can clear. But there are a lot of people who want to play the game at a higher level and try to get these really cool clears for low cycles, or maybe not even low cycles, just for the clear, but for the satisfaction of running sustainless. The fact that she has a higher ceiling is still there, and the fact with the higher ceiling she can perform better is still there. Again, there are many clears now that you can go check of her doing Castorice level damage. There are clears of her using the same team at the same clear level. There are low cost teams now. That's another thing I didn't mention. There are absolutely low cost clears with her now, where she is really cooking. Like running a Gallagher as the sustain, RMC obviously, because RMC is 0 cost and is free and works best in soft for both these characters when it comes to them being a hyper carry, so that's why RMC is always going to be there. And if you run Gallagher sustain and RMC and then Evernight herself, that's only 1 cost. When it comes to higher investment like E2 Castorice hyper carry versus E2 Evernight hyper carry, I don't exactly know yet. I'd have to test that myself to see. Both our E2s are incredibly broken, so I can't get too into that. I'm mainly talking about the E0S1 levels. But again, 1 cost Evernight is actually able to clear. Obviously, 1 cost is very unrealistic for 99.9% of the player base, so I'm not going to fully account for that. But I'm saying it is possible with Castorice. It's practically impossible. At least I'm pretty sure, as far as I can recall, it is impossible to do a 1 cost clear at a 0 cycle level, especially against bosses that are resistant to the element. The ones I was watching was actually resistant to the element, which is insane. So the fact that she also isn't as reliant as Castorice on Hyacinth and Hyacinth Land Code especially is extremely good for her ceiling and team flexibility. Obviously, as I mentioned in the beginning, pretty much the ideal team is the same as Castorice, but instead of Castorice, it's Evernight. And the best team that's going to be better than Castorice hyper carry and also Evernight hyper carry is Castorice plus Evernight. Both of them together is the best. That does not mean that Evernight is a glorified eidolon for Castorice. Doesn't mean Evernight sucks. Doesn't mean Evernight is weak. I really don't understand why people end up doing this whenever a unit is coded to kind of be like a sub DPS for a current main DPS. I just don't understand why people keep jumping to the conclusion on why this unit is just horrible, glorified eidolon for this. It was the same thing with Anoxa. Anoxa is just the Herda slave, glorified eidolon. And now look, he's practically better than her. It's just something I don't understand, so I wanted to make a video talking about it and why I personally do think Evernight is a lot better than people are giving her credit for. Again, in this video, I highlighted what Evernight does that's similar, talking about calcs being similar when it comes to hyper carry on the same teams, how she can function sustainless as opposed to Castorice, who really can't. The Hyacinth reliancy is a lot less with Evernight because, again, she can function sustainless and function better with a regular sustain, and how technically she can clear at a lower cost easier, I want to say, and overall has a higher ceiling. Big disclaimer, I feel like I have to say this, I am not discrediting Castorice. Castorice is still broken. Evernight is a lot better than people are saying. The whole point is talking about Evernight. I'm not throwing any shade at Castorice, even though this video might sound like that. There is no shade at Castorice. Castorice is broken, as I mentioned, maybe 3-4 times in this video as well. Castorice plus Evernight, the best team you can do for both of them. If you want to do that, W, but don't regard Evernight as just the Castorice slave. Evernight herself can perform just as good as Castorice, if not better. And that, again, that wraps it up. I just wanted to make this video because a lot of people have been spreading misinformation, honestly. You might still think that she's a glorified eidolon. If this video doesn't really help you change your mind and you don't care about my opinion, then it is what it is. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about Evernight in the comments below. Personally, I think she is a really cool unit, and I can't wait to see what more people do, because I'm not the best player. I can't do these super low-cost clears, so the best I can do is to watch other people do it. I try my best to do high ceiling clears on different accounts and stuff, because obviously my account is not free to play. So I can't wait for when she does release, and the really good players get to show how strong she actually is and the low cost stuff you can do with her. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about Evernight. Peace out.